Chapter 11, Part 1. By the time Clovis had been in Finn's hut for 3 days, he knew Westwood by heart. He could go upstairs and downstairs into the attics where the maid Bella had hidden Bernard's secret pile of money, and into the cellar where he had made friends with the bats. He knew the outhouse where Bernard had kept a pet rat, and the tree which Dudley and Joan had tied a little girl from the village and beaten her with willow twigs because she had been trespassing by the lake. And he could imitate any accent. After he's been there a week, he'll be talking like Sir Aubrey or braying like Joan, Finn said to Maya. The Goodleys had taught Clovis to fence, and he had been in so many plays in grand houses that his table manners were excellent. If he got to go to Westwood, Finn would be sure that he could hold out for a little while. Finn had shown him a map of the north of England, and Clovis had discovered that the village where his foster mother lived was only 30 miles away, which cheered him up a lot. But he's such a coward, Finn said to Maya. They were scraping the old paint off the Arabella's deck fittings, a job which Clovis did not care for. I don't think it's cowardly to be afraid of hiding in a dark cellar and waiting to be snatched by 2 horrible crows, said Maya. Finn frowned. You're always defending him, he said crossly. Well, he's alone in the world, said Maya. So am I alone in the world, said Finn. No, you aren't. You've got Lila, who adores you, and Professor Glastonbury, and the Chief of Police, and all the Indians here. And when you get to the Zante, you'll probably have lots and lots of relatives, aunts and uncles and cousins, and maybe grandparents too. Huge family. Do you think so? Hadn't thought of it like that. Finn did not look particularly pleased. Maya nodded. I'm sure it'll be like that, whereas Clovis and I don't have anybody. Well, you've got Miss Minton. It was Maya's turn to stare. 3 months ago, she hadn't known that Miss Minton existed. When she'd first seen her, she thought she was a terrifying witch, but now... There was a pause. Then, and you've got me, said Finn. Maya lifted her head and smiled at him. For a moment, she felt completely happy. Then she looked at Finn's hand resting on the tiller. But you're going to go away. Yes, he said. That's true. I am going away. Later that night, when Maya came back to the bungalow and Finn was frying some eggs Vera had bought for their supper, Clovis said, There's something I want to ask you about. When I was looking for Maya the first time, I asked for a place called Teferney, or the House of Rest. Maya told me that was what it's called, and Miss Carter had it on her notepaper. But no one had heard of it, and they looked sort of funny. And then the captain of the boat wouldn't put me down on the Carter's landing stage. He said it was a bad place. What did he mean? Finn sat back on his heels. He seemed to be wondering whether to speak or not. Then he said, I'll tell you, but you must promise not to say anything to Maya. And he told Clovis what had happened when the Carters first came to the Amazon. They found an Indian longhouse by the river and some thatch huts back in the forest. The land and the houses belonged to the Tefuri, which is the tribe which Furrer and Tappy belong. But many of the Indians had left to find work in the town, and the elders of the tribe agreed to sell the land and the houses on it to the Carters. The price was agreed before witnesses. A proper ceremony took place, and Mr. Carter signed the document to which the old chief put his mark. The Tepuri asked that the House of Rest, which was what the Longhouse had been called, should be left standing, because a very wise medicine man had died there, and his spirit still lived in the house and did not want to be disturbed. Mr. Carter agreed to everything. Good land by the river was so hard to find since so many Europeans had come to Manas to make their fortune, that the rubber trees in the surrounding forests were plentiful. The money was to be paid to the Indians in 3 lots. Mr. Carter paid the first lot promptly, in gold coin to fetch from the bank, and the chief of the Tepuri thanked him and took his people to build themselves homes further up the river. A month later, the chief's messenger came for the second lot of money and was sent away. Mr. Carter, he was told, was waiting for more gold to come from the Bank of England on a special ship. The messenger went back into the forest and came again a month later. He was told that the ship with the gold on had sunk in a storm. And so it went on. The Indians began by being polite and ended up shaking their fists at the Carters. Those Europeans who knew what was happening went to the chief of police, who tried to force Carter to pay what he owed, but Carter always found an excuse not to do so. Not only that, but he broke his word to the Indians and pulled down not only the surrounding huts in the forest, but the longhouse itself, and on the site he built his bungalow. Mrs. Carter had Teferney, the House of Rest, put on her writing paper. She thought it sounded good, but no one in Manas ever called it that, nor would the Indian traders land on the Carter's landing stage, but always, like the captain who had brought Clovis, stopped higher up. And the many decent Europeans who knew what had happened tried to have as little to do with the Carters as possible. After this, not many Indians would come to work for the family. Those that did, Furrer and Tappy and old Lila, stayed for personal reasons. Lila because she wanted to be near Finn and her father, Furo because he was her nephew, Conchita because she had a crippled brother to support in Manas. When they worked in the house, they were unforgiving and sullen, and secretly they believed that one day the old medicines man spirit, which had been disturbed and chained, would rise up against the Carters, and the family would get what they deserved. Clovis had been listening to Finn with a very worried face. That's a sort of curse. Mare shouldn't live in that house if it's been cursed, said Clovis. I know, said Finn, but nobody's cursed Mare. Nobody in the world would do that. And Furo and the others have promised to look after her. They absolutely promised. And you're not going to tell Mare? No, definitely not. She's got enough to put up with, what, with those awful twins.